Hello, Laziali all over the world. Welcome to Lazio Lounge, the one and only podcast about La Prima Squadra Capitale, completely in English. I'm Vittorio Campanile. With me, Alasdair McKenzie. Alasdair, another incredible performance from Lazio. Beating Genoa away is something that we are really not used to see in the last years. But this season, Lazio is able to do anything, I think. Do you agree?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the latest example, I think, of, like I just said before we came on, a game that Lazio probably wouldn't have won in previous seasons, in the last 2 or 3 seasons. Given the flow of the game, given the way the momentum shifted, it was a really impressive performance. In terms of the way that I think the real maturity of the team, to be honest, the way they saw out the game, the way they navigated the difficult parts, that they took advantage of their opportunities when they came. And all of this despite having lost to Cherby in the hour before kickoff, despite having, an unrecognisable back five, essentially, compared to what we're used to. So, yeah, it's another week where we're here again to talk about a victory, but this one totally different from the others and with different players to talk about, which is probably the most encouraging thing.
Yeah, for people who maybe are not very aware about Serie A, Genoa is probably one of the team most on form with the new manager Nicola. They won the last two. They didn't allow a lot of goals at home. I think none in the last 3-4 matches. So this tells you what a challenge it was. Lazio scored 3 times against Genoa at home. Everybody said without Acerbi, Lazio is going to struggle. It's not going to be the same team. Lazio was able to beat Genoa. Yes, Genoa scored twice, but one was an amazing goal from outside the box, and the second one was a penalty. So there's really nothing to blame Vavro for. And let's start from, this summer signing that made his first start in Serie A in February. At the beginning, I watched his face, and he looked really, really scared. I was like, oh my, this is going to be terrible. But
yeah.
As the match went on, I thought he found the pace, he found the rhythm, he found confidence. And overall, I think he had a good performance. I'm not saying he played as a Sherby, but it was a good performance.
Yeah, absolutely. He was, the first player that Inzaghi picked out after the game, and I don't think he was the best player on the pitch. I think it says a lot that Inzaghi wanted to talk about him because he did deserve praise from this game, and he deserved praise for a number of reasons. First of all, that he wasn't expected to play until last minute. Second of all, like you say, because it was the first time he started a Serie A game. So it's not just that you're saying, right, Dennis, start doing some stretches, you're playing in half an hour. It's that you're saying, right, Dennis, you're playing for the first time ever in Serie A from the start in half an hour. And we've not seen an awful lot of this guy, especially since he's come back from injury. It's been very hard for him to find any playing time. And yeah, I think he started quite nervously, but when you're playing that nervously, I think he went about it in the right way because he was keeping it very simple. It was, playing to his strengths basically, which is what we didn't see him do at the start when he was playing on the right side of that defence and he was trying to integrate in the way that Lazio played, building from the back, exchanging passes with Lucas in the midfield. And that's not his strength. And he got caught out for pace. He got caught out in possession. Whereas this time he was like, right, I'm going to do what I'm good at. He headed the crosses away. He got his clearances away. And as the game went on, we saw him growing confidence. And I think overall, we came away from that match thinking of Vavro as a player that we can actually count on in big games now. Because, it's one thing him doing that in a, say if we beat Sampdoria 4-0 and he's playing in defence and he does that, it's quite hard to really take much from that game. But to play away in Genoa, a fixture we've had so many troubles in the past, a game when we've been under real pressure, where we've conceded 2 goals, which we don't do very often, it says a lot that he was able to play at that level and steadily improve throughout the game. So for me, he's the real story of this match, to be honest, considering what we were thinking going into it and what we've come away with.
One thing very important, I thought it was he didn't play a lot recently. I think he didn't play a second in the last month or so. Probably the last biggest appearance he made was in Coppa Italia because Lazio went out of the Europe League last year. So it was even important to see him finishing the match in a good form because after you don't play a lot, maybe you start well, but in the second half you start to feel the fatigue. Training is never a match, so that was encouraging. Um, One thing, I agree with the decision of Simone Inzaghi of picking him instead of Acerbi, even because Luis Felipe was out because he couldn't play. Do you think that from now on, when some of the three central defender will not be able to play, Vavro will be in the mix? We saw Bastos, Patrick being the first substitution there. Do you think that now Vavro will be one of those choices for Inzaghi, or only if Acerbi, the central defender, will not be available?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think he still has to play in the centre, and that's what works against him, because Acerbi is the number one choice there, obviously, and it's quite hard to move because the guy is never injured. It was even more of a shock that we lost him, given who he was before this game. And also, Lazio have come across a really settled defence this season, and having that balance between Felipe, Acerbi and Radovic has really been working. So, although it was an encouraging performance, sadly, I don't think it's one he's really going to be able to build on any time immediately, because the only other option really is if Acerbi moves to the left, which he has done several times, and Vavro plays in the middle, and Radu is the one to drop out of the team. Because I think, for me, Vavro playing the centre is the obvious position for him. It's the position of least danger. It's the one that plays to his strengths the most. And I think that the fact that we've seen Inzaghi, over time, position him there rather than on the right-hand side where he started off kind of tells us that Inzaghi feels the same way. Just picking up on what you're saying about his appearances there, though, I just got it up, and he started in every Europa League group game, but in Serie A, he's only played 4 games off the bench all season until the Genoa match, and 2 of those were in the first 3 weeks. So that means he's had 2 substitute appearances in about 23 weeks going into this weekend in Serie A. So,
and I think
the guy is 23 years old as well. It's I think
he played more in Marassi than in every other pitch, right? Because he came in the first match of this year against Sampdoria when Acerbi was a little bit injured.
Yeah.
And played 90 minutes again in Marassi last Sunday. So, if Lazio play at Marassi every time.
That's funny looking at it, because the first 2 games he played were against Sampdoria and Spal, and then the second 2 games he played were against Sampdoria and Spal. So, he was finally allowed to be let loose on a team that doesn't begin with S. But yeah, no, I mean, but I think that is the issue with him, is that he is this season at least going to find it quite hard to get that space in the team. But what I was going to say was, the fact that he is 23 years old and he has had such little opportunity this season to play in the team means, like I've said before, that I think we should be slow to write this guy off, because there's a reason they wanted to spend this money on him. There's a reason he came here with a reputation that people do rate him in his own country, in Copenhagen, where he came from. And I think in the future, hopefully, if not immediately, in the future, there may well be space for him in this team.
Yes, definitely. The question mark is, will Inzaghi next summer, I presume, try to move him in a different position, or will he stick to be the central defender and maybe move Acerbi? Because we saw him playing on the right side of Acerbi, and at the beginning of the season it didn't work out. Now we don't know if it's just because he had to learn the position, or because it's a position where he struggled to play. But obviously, when a team like Lazio, that doesn't spend that much money, spend 11 million on a player and just be a sub, I find it very hard to understand it. Now, next year, going to be probably Champions League, crossing fingers, and so maybe there's going to be more rotation there. But I don't know. I think Inzaghi will have to force and find a solution there to make him play more.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the answer, though, is that he has to play through the centre and therefore push Acerbi to the left. And that's not the worst idea in the world anyway, because if you look at our options we've got on the left side of that defence, Stefan Radu isn't, like, as we know, isn't a guy who can play 2 games a week anyway. He is someone who's, you know, in the latter stages of his career now. He's getting on a bit. He's still a very useful player, but he's not going to last forever. So when we're looking at left-sided players for that part of the pitch, Bastos has done well in the past there. Patrick has played there. Felipe has played there. But none of those guys are naturally left-footed options. They would all prefer to play on the right side if they could. So I think the space that Vavro perhaps could have is that when it's more a case of when Vavro is rested than when more a case of when Radu is rested than when Acerbi is rested, because Acerbi, as we know, doesn't rest. But if it's a case of Radu needs time off, then you push Acerbi to the left, you put Vavro in, there you go. Now, the question I have about that, I suppose, is more how that impacts the possible integration of someone like Armini in the future, because I think that's something we'd like to see, but that's possibly looking a bit too far ahead because the guy is still with the Primavera and perhaps needs, you know, more game time in senior football anyway before he's considered as someone to play in the senior Lazio team.
Well, he still have to sign the contract with Lazio, so maybe next year he will leave. We don't know. We hope no, obviously, but it's going to be interesting. Alistair, talking about Acerbi, because he didn't train on Monday, and there are rumors that he could miss even Bologna. At that point, with Luis Felipe coming back, would you give another start to Vavro, or would you put Luis Felipe in the central position and play Bastos and Radu, or Patrick and Radu beside him?
I think Vavro's kind of earned the place, you know, and for me, it is tricky because for me, I've always thought that Luis Felipe's natural role is in the centre. I think that's where he's best placed as well. But the thing is, we've seen that Felipe is more adaptable. Like Acerbi, both of them are best in the centre, but both of them are more than capable of playing on either side of the centre. Vavro, I'm not convinced can do that. So if you're going to talk about rotation, I think it would be fine to have Vavro in the middle and then Felipe and Radu either side of him, for example, or perhaps Patrick in there as well. So there are options. I mean, it's not the deepest defence in the world, but suddenly if you and we shouldn't probably read too much into one game against Genoa, but at the same time, I think if you do get a dependable performance out of a player that you've been waiting to see that from, it does make a big difference in terms of how you can look at the defensive selection. And I think that game was the kind of game that changed Inzaghi's mind. It's the kind of game that, for example, Valon Berisha never had for Lazio. You know, you need. We've talked about this quite a lot before, but as those fringe players in the team, because this Lazio 11 is so set, and then the preferred replacements are so obvious, you know, you've got Caicedo, you've got Patrick, you've got Cataldi, you know, for the rest of the squad players, their opportunities are so limited that they really have to make a big impression when they have those opportunities, which is something that Berisha, Durmisi, these guys never really managed to do. So Vavro almost needed a stroke of luck like Acerbi falling out of the team at the last minute to be handed that opportunity in the first place. But the fact that he's now taken it does, I think, judging by the way we've seen Inzaghi react before, the way we know his mentality, the way he trusts players, the way he nurtures that trust, I think that kind of ticks all the boxes for him. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Inzaghi now be more willing to give him chances.
And another thing very important is, again, we were playing against Genoa, a team in great form, without two starting defenders because we didn't have Luis Felipe and we didn't have Acerbi. This was a thing that if happened last year, Lazio would have lost the match. And instead, we have to say again, Patrick played a great match. I thought Radu was excellent, but Patrick as well played played a great match. And I remember talking about it in the podcast last year that Patrick was really dangerous. And now I was thinking yesterday, I don't remember a dangerous tackle from Patrick this year in the box, but even close to the box. So you see, he has improved in a lot of different ways. And honestly, I was thinking Lazio has more option in defense than, for example, Inter or even Juventus as well. If you think Inter has four central defenders, right? They have Bastoni, Godin, De Vrij, and Skriniar. That's it. Lazio has Bastos, Patrick, Radu, Luis Felipe, Acerbi. Now has even Vavro. We have 6. So, I'm not saying that these 6 are all great defenders, but they can play at a certain level. So I see an upgrade there that it's very important considering the past of Lazio. So, they're all very positive sign even for the future, considering next year, hopefully, playing in the Champions League.
Yeah, well, I wanted to move on actually to the next big question that's come out of this game, which is about the wing backs. Because again, we saw Marasic and Johnny start like they did against Inter. And unfortunately, it was another case like against Inter where a lot of people have come away not particularly happy with Johnny and his performance after we thought we'd seen some improvement from him. So we've got some questions, and Andrew on Twitter asks us what should be done with the wing-back positions. Marasic clearly deserves to start currently, but Lazzari has also been much better than Johnny. Alex Di Cesare replied to him saying it's easy, start Marasic and Lazzari. So I mean, well, first of all, there's another question to come on the back of that, but we've seen it happen 2 games in a row now, Vittorio, where Inzaghi's looked to his bench, he's brought on Lazzari, and then he's kept Lazzari on the right, moved Marasic to the left. Is that something you think is now, after 2 identical games almost, what he's going to likely do going forward?
That's a big question mark, because you have Lukaku. And at this point, I would think, well, give a chance to Lukaku, especially against Bologna. We have to say that Johnny didn't struggle as much against Inter, but obviously against Inter you had Candreva, that it's a dangerous player. Against Genoa, you didn't have the same opponent, even though if you go and watch all the 2 goals of Genoa start from that side. It's true that the second one, Johnny was already out, but the first one, Johnny allowed Genoa to put the ball in the box too easily. So I wasn't happy about the performance of Johnny, and I thought Inzaghi made the right decision. But we have to be honest, Lazzari came in and was, if possible, worse than Johnny. He didn't play as expected. So I don't know. I was really pleased about Marusic. I would honestly give a chance to Lukaku. I think he's ready. He warmed up both against Inter and against Genoa. So yeah, I think the next thing for me to do is to start Lukaku against Bologna Saturday and see how things goes, and then from there start. I think Marusic have proved that can play on both sides of the pitch, so that can be an interesting option. So yeah, I would start Lukaku if he's fit, honestly.
Well, the problem almost is for Inzaghi, and it is kind of a problem in a weird way, is that Marasic has done so well. And again, like I was saying with Vavro, this is a guy who's not had lots of opportunities, but now he's taken them. And his goal, by the way, was just brilliant. I mean, it's a hell of a start to the game. And another example of what he can do in an attacking sense. But so I mean, we do seem to have a lot of people now campaigning for him to be starting on the left. For me, I think that you take a lot of his kind of danger away by playing him on the wrong side. I kind of expected in a way that Lazzari would be tried on the left side before Marasic would actually, but it's not happened that way. Maybe they want to keep Lazzari on his right foot in order to get those deliveries in the box. But yeah, I mean, I just wonder. I mean, I know what you mean with Lukaku. He's finally seemingly fit again. He's training again, but is it not just a bit of a gamble? You know, it's this point of the season. You keep talking about however many cup finals we've got left going towards the end of the season. Is it not a bit too much of a risk to throw Lukaku in now when we don't really know where he is?
I think the biggest question mark is how this will affect Johnny. I think big part of the Inzaghi decision is reflection of how will Johnny take it, because you can test Lukaku, you never know how it's gonna work out. But even if you move Marusic on the left, you know how it's gonna affect the performance from the first minute. So I think Inzaghi is thinking, okay, if I bench Johnny now, will I lose a player, or will he react or be always available? Because this is the question mark. We don't know when Lulic will be back, and so until we don't have Lulic back, maybe Johnny feels like that is his position, and if I bench him, I'm going to lose a player. And at the moment, Lazio hasn't got that many options on that side. So I presume this is probably the reason why Johnny's starting all the matches instead of trying Lukaku or moving Marusic. Bologna is going to be another important test for him to show that he has improved. Again, I would risk Lukaku, because if he's fit, then give him a chance. But yeah, Inzaghi, we have to remember, he's very careful at this thing, right? How his player react to substitution, or he wants the group to be all very focused. And so probably if Johnny lose the starting job, there is a risk that the player's mind could be off till the end of the season.
Do you think that fans are being a bit quick to dismiss Johnny here, though? It's 2 games where perhaps expected more, but the reason more was expected was that he was showing improvements in the first place. So, talking about Lukaku coming in out of the wilderness to start matches, talking about one of Marusic or Lazzari playing on their unfavoured side, do you think it's, maybe Johnny just needs more time, more trust? I mean, is there something to be said for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we said it from August, right? That Johnny is not a natural fit for the 3-5-2. He's more a player for a 4-4-2 or a 4-3-3. He has to adapt, and it's never easy. Obviously, he had now more than 6 months to do it, so you would expect something more. And to be honest, again, as I said, I thought against Genoa he didn't play that bad. I was hoping to see something more, but he wasn't that bad of a player. I think we need to give him time. The problem is, obviously, Lazio at this point of the season cannot allow time to anybody. So he has to step up and show everybody what type of player he is, and adapt to this 3-5-2 that is not obviously his best position.
The other question we got regarding left wing backs was, and I've not really had much time to think about this, but Maddie was asking us, given Inzaghi sticks to his 3-5-2 formation, who would your dream signing be for the left wing back position? Terry has had hard time getting rid of all the deadwood there. So yeah, I mean, some people have suggested in response to that, Robin Gosens and Timothy Castan from Atalanta were mentioned. Marcos Alonso from Chelsea, we've heard his name before, he was mentioned. But is there anyone out there that you've seen play and you thought, right, that is the perfect left wing back for Lazio?
Well, Gosens obviously is a great player. It's not going to be cheap for Lazio to sign him. Fares, for example, from Spal, he's one of the players that I would be interesting. Honestly, I saw a lot of Strefezza still of Spal. He can play on both sides, and he can be another interesting signing and quite cheap. So, if Fares recover from the bad injury he had, I think he could be a very interesting signing, especially if Spal get relegated. I think he could be sold quite easily and at a good price. So, again, that could be a cheap option. I think at this point, Lazio has to look for players who have international experience, especially if you're going to play the Champions League. You need players with Champions League experience. Obviously, this is going to cost you. So, Gosens would be perfect. He knows Serie A, he knows Champions League, and so on. But we know that Atalanta is not selling cheap his players. So, yeah.
And
maybe
he's having the season of his life as well, so...
Yeah, it's true that every summer Atalanta tend to sell his top players. So maybe this is his year. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking dream signings, I'd say let's go all out. Let's get Andy Robertson in.
Yeah, easy one.
Why not? They'll try and convince them to splash the budget on it.
And we can buy Icardi as vice immobile. Or Cavani.
No, we don't want Icardi to ruin the team atmosphere.
And we can sign Cavani then.
Cavani, yeah. Yeah, okay, fine. Well, we'll do that. We'll pull the strings and see what we can do. Yeah, and another question we had was about Lucas Leiva missing the next game, and
is he missing the next game?
Sorry?
He's not missing the next game. He wasn't suspended, right? He got a yellow card, not a red one.
All right, sorry. We've got a question here saying, given Lucas Leiva is missing the next game, and I have not questioned this, so maybe we need to do a bit of research before we answer and find out if this is right or not.
He was suspended after the Brescia match, right? So I don't think he...
Yeah, he's not racked up the yellow cards yet, I don't think.
I think he already, so he restarted, so he shouldn't be already... disqualified. So I think if he's not injured, which I don't think, he should be playing against Bologna.
Yeah, no, he's not suspended. He's not suspended. So never mind. We're going to ignore that question. Maybe these are landmine questions that have been placed to try and trip us up here.
Well, the question is, from an experienced player like Leiva, this is not the first time he get a stupid yellow card.
Yeah.
I mean, he played well, but obviously, knowing Inzaghi and knowing how Leiva plays, we all knew that he was going out, right, in the second half. And he got a silly yellow card. I thought he could avoid that yellow card easily from a player from his experience. And this is not the first time, Alistair, because I remember we said the same thing in another match. Now I don't recall which one. But, yeah, again, I like him how he played against Genoa, but that yellow card was costly. And if you remember, at the beginning of the second half, Genoa had a big chance, and Leiva completely avoided the tackle because he knew he already got a yellow card. He would get a red card after that. So, yeah, he has to be careful. I didn't expect from him to make some stupid foul.
Yeah, the problem is that if he gets an early booking like that, a lot of the aggression goes out of his game. It kind of has to. And I'm sure that's encouraged by Inzaghi, who's terrified of red cards.
Correctly so.
If you take that aggression out of Lucas's game, it takes quite a lot out because he needs to be there. He needs to be showing aggression because that's his role. He's the guy who's marshalling that midfield. And given the fact that the players either side of him aren't exactly, defensive players naturally.
No.
He's relied upon to be the guy who's putting in those challenges. So, yeah, I was thinking that while I was watching this game, and not just that, but also the way he talks to the referees still, there's just so much complaining, so much talking and so on, and it made me think of the Napoli game again, and there's just...
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess I was thinking of a player of his experience. You expect a bit of a cooler head in these moments, maybe, and I did feel a little bit like he might have just been getting a bit frustrated with how isolated he was becoming at times. I think Genoa were doing quite a good job of pushing players forward, and sometimes the Lazio midfield, after they pushed up to support attack, were quite slow in getting back to help Lucas out, and he found himself a bit isolated at times. And when he made that challenge for the yellow card, I thought, well, he's just, he's annoyed that he's been made to do it in a way. But there are always other ways, you know. So it is a frustrating part of his game.
Yeah, he had Radu close to him. He could avoid the tackle and leave it to Radu. So, um, but yeah, I agree. Part of your thoughts. Obviously, when you're playing close to Milinkovic Savic and Luis Alberto, there are gonna be occasion where he's gonna be all alone to defend. That's obviously one part of the risk of Lazio playing with Milinkovic Savic and Luis Alberto. But again, a player of his experience, especially because Cataldi came in the second half. Now he scored an incredible free kick, but for example, on the first goal of Genoa, I thought Cataldi was far away from the player, and if Leva was playing, probably this wouldn't have happened. And at the moment, Lazio doesn't have a real Vice Leva, so Leva has to be careful because even Parolo is not that type of player.
No, exactly, and actually that was what that question that we got derailed about because he's not suspended. But the question was actually about that. It was about how much trust we can have in Cataldi's defensive abilities, and I think you're right. The thing is, he's just not a Vice Leva because he's a different kind of player. So we can't really look at him as being someone who steps in and does the same job. It does kind of change the way the Lazio play a bit. He does have a lot more technical quality, but then as a result, you have to sacrifice some of that that kind of defensive vision, I suppose. You know, the way that Leva intercepts and always finds himself in the right areas, and I think that's down to his experience as much as anything else. But yeah, I think Cataldi was blamed in many ways for the first goal. I don't know if it's quite as simple as if Leva was on the pitch, that goal wouldn't have gone in or he wouldn't have had that space, but it's an easy way for people to criticise him. But then again, Lucas Leiva wouldn't curl a free kick into the top corner again. So, well, maybe he would, but I don't think he would. So yeah, it is a different role, you know, and that's the thing is that there is no natural. I mean, it would be quite hard in world football to find a player who does everything that Lucas Leiva does because he's phenomenal at that job. But it is slightly concerning that there's no one really to come in and do the same thing.
Yeah, I think Escalante will be the replacement of Leiva, but he's coming next year, and I'm not 100% sure that he has the same skills of Leiva. Obviously, he's a defender midfielder, so he should be able to play in that position. But yeah, at the moment, this year, we don't have any option. The other thing I was thinking, Alistair, is Marco Parolo, that was starting so many matches last year, now he's struggling to find some playtime these days. It's really surprising to see one of those type of players struggling to play after playing so much in the past years. That's surprising, but at the same time tells you about the increase of level of this team, of performance.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's kind of changing the narrative about the team. I think quite a lot is that. And the way I've looked at the team as well, to be honest, because the starting 11 was always deemed as a strong one of the strongest in the league, and the doubts, I suppose, were around the quality and depth. But then recently we're seeing Lazio continue this winning mentality, this ability to get the game over the line, and with Felipe Caicedo starting up front, with the wing backs being completely different, with the defence changing around, and yes, you've still got that spine most of the time, of Strakosha, Cherby, Lucas, Milinkovic, Alberto Immobile. But there's still a number of positions to fill around that. And I think of all the things that Inzaghi has done to make this happen this season, that for me is the most crucial thing of all, is his ability to get the best out of some quite limited squad players. If you compare these guys from what they were when they arrive, the likes of Patrick, Bastos, even Vavro now, Caicedo, to what they are now, it's incredible to see. And you can say the same thing about the star players. Compare, Luis Alberto, Milinkovic Savic had a lot of promise, but there's a long way to go from being a player of promise to what he is now. Ciro Immobile. Almost everyone that Inzaghi lays his hands on becomes a better player. But his ability to turn guys who have previously been costly, that have cost this team points, that have committed individual errors, and to turn them into guys who, at one end of the pitch in defence, are reliable, like Patrick has become, like Bastos has become, and at the other end of the pitch, guys like Caicedo, who at one time were kind of workhorses. He was, someone who you would play as a physical strength man up front, but now he's scoring goals, scoring quite a lot of goals, and it's amazing to see. It's amazing to think what he could do with an even more talented squad.
Yeah, let's not forget that Luis Alberto came to Lazio for 5 million euros. He was hardly playing with Liverpool, right? They sent him on loan to Spain for 1 year because he was useless. And now he's top assist in Europe, a star player. And probably you have to give credit even to Iglitari to pick him up. But, look what Inzaghi have made Luis Alberto. From trequartista to playmaker in the midfield, quality player, and a player who was useless for Liverpool. Liverpool was trying to get rid of him. So,
that's the thing. Like, Alberto's a great example of this because of the way he knows how to get the best out of these players in his system. And the system has rarely changed, but he's been able to use tactical changes with his selection in order to get the best out of these players, whether that's in the way that he uses Correa and Caicedo differently alongside Immobile, or whether that's, like you say, with Alberto, who originally was a frustrating winger who didn't really do anything for Lazio, and then became a trequartista and was excellent in 17-18 season. And when Inzaghi saw that he was starting to get, marked out of games, he wasn't getting as much space, he was struggling a bit, and he moves him further back the pitch, and he gets a lot more space, a lot more room in which to dictate and to be able to move around the pitch more freely. And there you go. I mean, it sounds simple once you've seen it happen, but none of these moves were simple at the time,
Yeah, and even Leva, Lazio signed him from Liverpool, and he was not playing anymore with Liverpool. We got rid of Biglia, that everybody was saying he's fundamental for Lazio. He's the playmaker of Lazio. Without Biglia, Lazio is going to lose a lot. And instead, Lazio play even better without him. We could say the same thing about Caicedo, plenty of players. So, yeah, we have to give credit to Inzaghi and to Tare, obviously. And I'm still not sure, Alistair. We are talking about, subs coming in and performing well. But is it thanks to the fact that Lazio is not playing Europe League and Inzaghi has a week to prepare the match, or the starters can rest more during the week? Or do you think that with these subs like Patrick, etc., Lazio would have been able to go further even in Europe League?
No, I would still contend that we kind of needed this to happen. We needed to drop out of the cup competitions, at least one anyway. I don't know about you, but this last week I haven't been feeling envious of watching Roma and Inter in the Europa League. I haven't really been looking at these games thinking, I wish we were involved. And I guess that's because of the position we're in Serie A. And I think that if we're going to continue this this momentum, then I think a big part of the reason has to be not only the recovery and rest and recuperation time, but the preparation time as well. They're getting a full week's period to actually tactically prepare for these teams, and there are very few easy games left, to be honest. And Genoa away, like you were saying at the start, they were unbeaten in 4, won their last 2. The wind was in their sails. The fans are behind them again, and that the Marassi is not an easy place to go for any team, let alone a team like Lazio with history behind them and all of this. So, yeah, I still think that it's not a good enough squad, not a big enough squad to really go that far in 3 competitions. But I think it's good enough to get the job done in what we're trying to do now, I hope.
What are we trying to do? Just to be sure.
We're trying to stay where we are. do everything we can to stay where we are. I'm not going to say the S word.
Okay. Well, no, the target is Champions League. I mean, that would be a terrific achievement. Um, to be honest, I saw Juventus play because Inter didn't. And again, this is another match that I'm not convinced. Juve didn't play well at all. They're really struggling. They're really struggling. Take off Cristiano Ronaldo out of this team, and they lose a lot because again, and they weren't playing against Real Madrid. They were playing against Spal that is getting relegated easily this season. So this would have been a match that last year Juventus would have won 4-0, and they have been struggling. So I don't want to talk about the S word, but the biggest difference I feel is that Juve is playing badly, has probably the best team in Serie A, but is playing terrible. Inter probably has a better team than Lazio, but they're not playing great football. Let's be honest. They have weaknesses. They don't know how to put Eriksson in place, and they're not playing great. On the other side, there is Lazio, who hasn't got that many talents, many options, etc., but is playing great football. Even against Genoa, everybody said Lazio played a great match and deserved to win. So I wouldn't say the S word. My target is still the Champions League, and being at this point with 17 points ahead of Roma, that's great. That's really impressive.
Could be worse. Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to see. I think it was Agnelli today.
Yep.
Was talking about that and said that essentially the thing that Lazio have got over Inter is that there isn't any weight of expectation. Inter is a team that's been built to win, and with that comes a certain degree of pressure, a certain degree of expectation from your fans, from your owners, from everyone. And the Lazio are already in a position where they're overachieving, and by doing so, can play with that kind of freedom. And I think that's quite easy. It's quite easy to say, but so far, to be honest, Vittorio, I think that's true. That's been true because not only have you seen Lazio continue to win these games, but you see them continue to do it with a laugh, a smile on their face, this amazing atmosphere this amazing unity between the fans and the team, and there's a really good buzz around the team right now. And I feel like, for me, a lot of that does just come from a team that is doing better than anyone expected. And if you compare that atmosphere to the atmosphere at Inter and Juve, where, yes, they're doing as well, if not better in Juve's case, in the league as Lazio this season, but the narrative is totally different. The way they're being talked about in the newspapers, on the TV, is totally different to Lazio. So it does kind of work.
Yes, I agree on part of it, but I think this team is having such run of form that they simply want to win every single match. When you get used to it, you hate to lose, and you can see it, right? Radu at the end of the first half said, "We have to keep fighting. We have to keep fighting," and this is how they're playing, right? They hate to lose. They don't remember how to lose, and they want to keep winning every single match. I don't think they're even looking to the table. They're just thinking, okay, next weekend there is Bologna. We have to beat Bologna, and I think it's when you start winning so many match or not losing so many match. Last lost match was the 25th of September. We're in February. You sort of auto-convince yourself that you have to win the next one, that you cannot lose. And when you have that confidence, then it's easier to overcome. We said last week, Lazio went down 9 times this year, and 8 times they were able to recover. So this proves you how confident the team is. So obviously they don't have that much pressure, but at the same time, you're so convinced that you can win that simply the team, we saw it celebrate after the final whistle of the match against Genoa. They were celebrating like winning the Coppa Italia because they feel like they need to win every match. They hate losing a match from now on. So I think it's both part, confidence and not feeling the pressure.
Yeah, and that's the perfect balance to strike, isn't it?
Yeah.
You need both those things, and you also need that level-headedness as well, that experience, and the guys like Radu, like Acerbi, like Lucas Leiva, who have kind of been there before and can say, or at least know when to say, let's calm down here. We need to stay focused, or whatever the message has to be. And for me, that was probably the most encouraging part on a mentality perspective from the game against Genoa was that the momentum really swung at one point. After Genoa got their goal back,
Yeah.
Nicola was throwing on forwards, and I have no idea what system they were playing by the end, but throwing on forwards, including a certain Goran Pandev.
Yeah.
And the pressure was building and building, and I think we all felt like in our gut that something bad might be about to happen. Because, and the reason is that we've seen bad things happen in those moments before, but again, it just, I was completely wrong about it. My gut was completely wrong there again, and this keeps happening this season, where I think that we've seen this film before and history's going to repeat itself. And then how do they react? They go up the other end, they get one chance from a free kick and they score, and they extend that advantage. They instantly kill that momentum. Yes, Genoa got another goal back again, but by that stage, it's too late. And they're just managing games so well, and they don't really seem phased by those momentum swings, by the atmosphere so much as perhaps they have done in the past.
Yeah, let's not forget last year, for example, Lazio went playing against Genoa away. We had like 10 players missing. We went ahead in the first half and we lost 2-1. So, it's fresh in our memory. But the other thing is, if you remember, after the Brescia match, someone was saying, is Lazio tired? Is the fatigue coming out, etc.? We saw it against Genoa. Lazio fighting and running till the last minute. So this team is fresh, even though, we are playing since August. And this is really important. And absolutely, after the goal of Genoa, we were all scared because Genoa was pushing, Lazio was a little bit struggling. And then we had 3 chances because, yes, we had the chance of Cataldi, but let's not forget that Correa had 2 great chances afterwards to kill the match. So I don't know if it's experience or what, but it's a different team. The players are pretty much the same of last year, but the team is playing different football. They have more experience, they are more careful, they don't make silly mistakes like last year. So yeah, it's completely different, and obviously it's unbelievable. It's great for a fan, but yeah, this team it's another team compared to last year, and it's great.
What do you think? You mentioned Correa there, and I just wanted to see what you thought about the selection now, because for a long time this season anyway, Correa was considered the kind of first choice partner to Immobile. He was in really good form, started off missing a lot of chances, then seemed to solve that problem. But the way Caicedo's been playing recently, it's quite hard to move him out of the team. So do you still think of Correa as the first choice option there, or do you think Caicedo deserves to continue?
I have to be honest, I didn't like Correa against Genoa. I thought while the rest of the team were fighting, he was a little bit less concentrate. And this is the second time in a row that happens when he come in. While last year, for example, when he was coming in, I remember the goal against Milan in the last minute. He was really on fire. I don't know if he's still not 100% fit, or is simply lack of motivation or concentration when he comes in the second half. But I wasn't impressed. I thought that with the right Correa yesterday, Lazio could have easily closed the match 4-1, 4-2, something like that. I thought Caicedo was a little bit tired. He was struggling in the second half, so Inzaghi had to make that change. Probably Caicedo wasn't 100% fit. But, if I have to take a negative thing from yesterday, is the performance of Johnny and of Correa. We know the talent of Correa, and yeah, I think he had two great chances and he didn't take it, which, for a team fighting for the Scudetto, you cannot make it happen.
So how are you feeling about Bologna then? I saw them a couple of weeks ago. They came to Rome. They won. Uh, they won pretty comfortably, to be honest. I know this hasn't exactly been the most vintage Roma side ever, and it was at a bad time for them, but they really impressed me that night. I thought they played great football. They played like the home team, to be honest. They have a number of dangerous players, particularly in midfield, but now they've added Musa Barrow as an interesting player as well. They caused us problems in the first game this season with that penalty penaltyopoly, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I mean, how confident are you feeling? Do you expect many changes to the team?
No, I don't think they're gonna be many changes. Well, it depends on the injury situation, but I don't think Inzaghi is gonna change that much. Again, it's a very tough match. We know Mihajlovic is a great manager. Even though Bologna didn't play well this weekend, it's a tough team. They have a couple of very interesting players, Solini, for example. I think the defense is not great. So, if Lazio is able to push and put pressure on Bologna's defense, that's going to be the way to win this match. But again, it's going to be a difficult match. It's Saturday, so Lazio has one day less to prepare this match. We have question marks with Acerbi. So it's a tough match, to be honest. And as you were saying before, they are not easy match for Lazio now, because past Spal, I think all the other matches are going to be complicated for Lazio. So again, it's very important to win. I'm talking about the Champions League race. Winning again is going to be fundamental. And I mean, Lazio has to prepare like it's a final again.
Yeah, I think in particular for me the importance of winning the home games is huge, and it's not really been an issue so far this season. And going even further back than that, the home form has been terrific, and I expect because of the time and I think it's a 3:00 Saturday game.
Yeah,
and I think we're gonna see another good crowd for that game. Fingers crossed. There's no coronavirus intrusions on Rome. So far, we're safe down here, but you never know. And yeah, I think we have to be winning these games. There was I was looking at the fixtures last week. I wrote an article about this and having a bit of a look at the running and trying to kind of categorize the games the Lazio have got left and into kind of three categories. And one of those was banana skin games, games that we should be winning but they pose a real danger. And I put the Bologna game in that category, and not only just because they're a better team than you might expect and a well coached team, but also that it comes on the same weekend as Juve Inter. And I just hope that that the idea of going top of the table, or the idea of extending the gap to Inter, or whatever it is, just the thought of those two going head to head doesn't prove a distraction in any way. And look, there's not been any evidence to suggest so far this season that this team will be distracted by what's going on elsewhere, but it is something that might be in the back of their minds, because it has the potential to be a monumental weekend in that way. If Lazio can do something as simple on paper as beating Bologna at home, and there's a draw or an Inter win in the other game, Lazio are top of the league after 25 rounds. So
don't say it.
You're too late. I'm just doing maths here. Just simple maths.
It's going to be a different week because there's all these rumors about coronavirus and things like that. There's Juve playing Champions League. So, the question mark of Acerbi, that's going to be important for Lazio. And yeah, Bologna is a very dangerous team. So, I think the player will be focused only on the match. They won't be thinking about what happened the day afterwards. Obviously, after the match, they're going to be thinking about Juventus Inter, but they're going to be focused only on the match. And to be honest, Juventus playing at home, I see it difficult for Inter to go there and win it. So we're gonna see what happens, but I think it's a very complicated match for Lazio again. So Lazio have to prove again to be, have that mentality to be in that position and beat Bologna, which is not easy.
Yeah, and it's I do think it's I mean, for me, it's I hate to say it, it's a game that it's quite difficult to see Lazio messing up, but I don't know. I still remain terrified every weekend.
Yeah, it's still football. Anything can happen. So, you cannot give anything for granted in a football match, especially in Serie A level. So anything can happen. There are players like Palacio who often score against Lazio, Orsolini who's really good, Barrow, etc. So they have plenty of options to score. So anything can happen. Alistair, before wrapping it up, do you have a stats this time? Are you prepared?
Always prepared, Vittorio.
Good.
Just a few. Like I've already said, it's so easy this season. So now we're on 59 points. That's the biggest number of points Lazio have ever accumulated after 25 games. But not only that, it's the biggest amount by 6. So taking into account 3 points for a win, the next most Lazio had by this point in the season was in 73-74. Obviously the first Scudetto season, and when we had 53. So massively outperforming history at the moment. Many people might have already seen this, but Ciro Immobile matched the all-time record for goals after 25 games of Angelillo from the 50s by scoring his 27th. And finally, there's only actually been 2 times in history that the second place team has had more points than Lazio. Sorry, not in history. In the last 9 years, the second place team has had more points than Lazio do right now. So there you go.
Wow, interesting. Thank you, Alistair, as usual, and thanks you everybody for listening. Again, remember, you can watch us on YouTube, subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Spreaker, and iTunes, and please rate and review the podcast if you can. And we're going to talk again after Lazio Bologna, another very, very, very important match. Thanks, Alistair. Have a good night.
Ciao.